Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mavs Film Room. I'm technically not your host, but I guess I'll fill in for Jay because I think I talk a little faster. All right, chill out. We have a lot more time to get into expletives in this episode. We haven't done a Mavs Film Room podcast, I think, since the playoffs, right, Jay?
Yeah,
it's been a while, like a lot of stuff has happened since our last podcast. Namely, an NBA season finished, and in about 3 weeks, a new one is going to start. So maybe like 4 weeks, but quite the timeline we're operating on right now.
Yeah, man, time really flies.
Time waits for no Mav.
All right, so we got a lot of shit to talk about today, Jay Fossil. First off, draft Wednesday. Pretty big day in the league,
It is. It's kind of funny, A bunch of guys' dreams are going to come true on a Wednesday. But I guess it's not that crazy because the NBA draft is usually on a Thursday. But, Thursday is like my favorite day of the week. Wednesday, I just couldn't care less for.
I mean, for you, it was the NBA draft. For me, it was Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday is like the day that, Charlotte plays Orlando. The game nobody watches.
Richie has now blocked us on Twitter.
Join the club, Richie.
Okay, so the Mavs have picks 18 and 31. I honestly haven't been paying attention to any college players, dude.
Yeah, neither have I. I think that's where Richie's.
Did you just brownify Richie's name?
Yeah. I have a nephew whose name is Richie, so I'm used to saying his name.
Whenever Richie appears on this podcast from now on, he will be called Richie.
Yeah, we're gonna bastardize his name.
It's like when Michael Scott was called Miguel in The Office.
Speaking of Michael Scott, I was just watching the Scott's Tots episode, which is universally recognized as like the hardest thing to watch.
Really? For me, the Diwali episode is so much harder to watch, purely because it's so cringeworthy and it's so accurate towards like just racial insensitivity.
It is.
Mindy Kaling.
Mindy Kaling made a Mindy Killing off that show.
Hey, good for her, man. I didn't love her character so much, but I do love the fact that she wasn't a stereotype. It's a pretty big step.
That's good. Yeah.
So speaking of stereotypes, is LaMelo Ball just the stereotype of the guy who everyone thinks in casual NBA fan circles that is going to go number 1, but in reality he's going to go number 2, and then one of the teams that skipped out on picking him is going to get a far better player?
I feel like that's Wiseman.
You really do?
I do. The thing you just described as the casuals number 1 who gets picked at number 2, yeah, that's Wiseman for me.
Okay. Do you think he doesn't have the versatility that the scouting reports give him?
I mean, look, I'm not Richie either. None of us have looked into these players that much at all, but just from the sort of like osmosis I've gotten from seeing people talk on Twitter, especially Richie, like you have Wiseman, and sure, he's obviously a very worthy top 5 player in this draft class, I believe. Some of the scouts I've seen have him way down below, but I'm not like that. But anyway, you have Wiseman, but you have a much better center right there, I think, honestly, in Onyeka Okongwu.
I can agree with that, even though I have no idea.
I'm like vaguely aware of who that is. I mean, I think, like for me, the players I know most is like, of course, LaMelo, Wiseman, and then Anthony Edwards. I feel like they're, consensus the top 3 picks in this draft. But
yeah.
After that, I think it's a lot less clear. And even in the top 3, I mean, I do believe that LaMelo is going to go first, assuming that the
Timberwolves pick him. Yeah.
I think there is still a little bit of question, but ultimately, I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the Warriors do at number 2. I mean, I know, like, from looking at some of what Warriors Twitter is saying, I think they definitely prefer Wiseman. But if you ask me, I'm not totally sure they even keep the pick because it doesn't make sense for them to draft a project like Wiseman. As talented as he may be, he didn't play this season. So
I kind of disagree. There are two questions about the Warriors pick, right? And we're kind of drifting away from Mavs territory here, but they're deep into luxury tax hell, So they're very limited in what deals they can do. I don't know the specifics, obviously, but I think they can't do sign and trade deals with the pick because they would be taking in cap, and that's just not allowed at this point.
So once you match the salary, I guess.
Yeah, there was obviously in casual circles and obviously on social media, people are constantly talking about the Warriors pick getting traded, but that is it's a very difficult thing to do. Obviously, that front office can manage it, but we really don't know what team is going to put together what offer for it that fits under their cap scenario.
Yeah. They would have to trade Wiggins, and I think that's a bit more difficult than it would seem on the surface, but I think we digress a bit. This is a Mavs podcast, Mavs first. So why don't we stick with the Mavs for this one?
The Warriors are gonna trade number 2 for 1831 and Dorian Finney-Smith.
And we get Draymond Green, right? Is that the deal?
Shout out to the Warriors for that second round pick. 4 years ago when we made that trade, I was just like, this is a bullshit second round pick that's not gonna ever become anything. Lo and behold, it's the first pick of the second round, which is actually a very valuable pick, especially in a draft like this, and I think nowadays the talent gap between the mid first round and early second round is not very large. So
especially I think in this draft, not only are these guys really skilled, they all seem like really high character guys. I mean, usually your drafts are gonna have high character guys because those are just the people that are selected by the process. But I mean, when I listen to Anthony Edwards talk, there's just a maturity as well as a knowledge of where he is and where he wants to go. That's pretty cool. So I'm really excited to see, obviously, where he ends up. I think he should be the number 1 pick. But then again, none of us know what we're talking about. But those picks, 18 and 31, could be headed anywhere. There have been a lot of reports that the Mavs want to move up in the draft, and the one person that I've heard floated, and this is from a reliable source, although I won't name them, is Obi Toppin. That if the Mavs move up, they might be moving up to make that pick. Position-wise, I guess it makes sense because he's a 4, and he can shoot next to KP. What do y'all think about that? Bringing in a rookie to be, your third guy.
One of the higher caliber rookies of this draft class?
Yeah, if it took moving Dorian I don't want to move Maxey, but if it took moving Dorian or Maxey or somebody that we really like but that has value, maybe even a THJ, would you do it?
THJ is where I draw the line for the draft. I think we can make a trade if we want to upgrade from him in free agency. But Maxey, it'd have to be that for him. It'd have to be one hell of a trade. DFS though, he's easily him and Jalen and DeLon, right, are probably the 3 most movable players, and DFS is the best one of them. So, and he's got an amazing contract. So I actually am somewhat okay with trading him away, even though I'd like to keep him too.
Yeah, I think his position is probably the one that if the Mavericks want to upgrade this offseason, I think he's definitely one that they could ship away if they're getting someone that's capable and an upgrade over him. Personally, I'd be very surprised if the Mavs traded up to the draft, just given their history with drafting when they're a contender, which clearly they are now. So I would be very surprised if the Mavs decided to make a rookie as an integral part of their rotation in a season that they're looking to take the next step in. But of course, this is the year 2020 and crazier things have happened.
Yeah, man. Not even in 2020. Tim Duncan and David Robinson on the same team in his rookie year. That's not a,
That is true. Although Tim Duncan was a number 1 overall pick, so.
No, that is true. That is true.
There's a bit of a difference.
But it's not impossible, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there have been a lot of reports, obviously, on social media about pretty much everything, but I think one of the most reputable and most essential things that we have to put out there is that everybody but KP and Luka are available right now.
Yeah. The Mavs actually do have some pretty good contracts in terms of salary that can be sent back in a trade, between DeLon Wright and Dwight Powell. So I think like they're definitely going to try and be active, and I do believe the Mavs will probably trade their first round pick. I mean, that's not source information or anything, but that's like just my personal belief that I think it makes more sense to keep pick 31 because it's not subject to any of the rookie wage scale and stuff like that. So you're afforded a lot more flexibility with the second round pick. But yeah, I think 18 will be traded with any number of contracts in return for hopefully an upgrade on the wing.
I'd be down for 18 and DeLon for somebody,
Yeah, I mean, even Tim Hardaway Jr. for that matter. I mean, it would have to be the right player.
I don't know about the Tim Hardaway. I agree with Fossil in here. I have been thinking lately that Tim Hardaway Jr. is the piece that you need to move if you're making a trade for a guy like Zach LaVine. And I know a lot of Mavs Twitter really thinks that he's the next coming of Dennis Smith Jr. I just want to say, like, y'all hate on guys who don't have, like, the analytics to shoot way too much, right? Like, Zach LaVine is a really, really good off-the-dribble basketball player.
I mean, LaVine is not even a bad shooter. Like, I think
he's a great shooter.
Yeah, he's a great shooter. I think people's concerns might come from like his ball dominance, but the fact of the matter is, like, when you bring a player of any sort of potential that has proven to be good, and you bring them into a system like the Mavs system, I mean, they'll find a way to fit him in.
Yeah, and on top of that, like, if you look at the playoffs, specifically what we were talking about in the playoffs. A big thing was, this team needs a secondary slasher. They need somebody else than Luka who can get to the basket, And one of the big things that got us hyped, when Dennis and Luka were together in Luka's rookie year was we thought, there's a possibility that you could have two guys that are very good at breaking down the defense in that way. And where Luka has made that step, Dennis never made that step. I think it spreads open the floor a lot, and Zach LaVine having to do so much in Chicago with that awfully coached Bulls team.
Yeah.
I think he will be more than open on a contender, like you said, to take a tertiary role. And on top of that, the dude can score, and he can kind of do like 3 out of 5 things that you need him to do on the court. And so even if KP's injured, he's still gonna keep you in the game along with Luka.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, LaVine has proven to be an explosive scorer, a capable ball handler. And I think we talk a lot about, upgrading the wings, upgrading defense for the Mavericks. And while that's certainly a need, I think an overlooked move that they can make is to get another ball handler that can take some pressure off of Luka. Because, while Tim Hardaway had probably the best season of his career this year, he shot close to 40% from three. So definitely did a really great job for them, and was a huge contributor to their NBA record offense this year. I just think, like, if you can upgrade his spot with a ball handler that can also give a similar, if not better, offensive production, I don't see why you wouldn't do it. And we would hate to lose a guy like Tim because he's a good guy, and has been in his time with the Mavs. But I guess that's just how basketball goes.
Yeah, I definitely prefer Zach LaVine of all like the just random rumors that are completely unsubstantiated on the internet. But I mean, there's some more, right? Like, Fossil, what do you think about Victor Oladipo? Jay, I know you're not with it, but
no, not at all.
Fossil, what are your concerns?
Some people list his attitude as a concern, especially if that report about him going up to the Knicks, the Heat, and some other team, not the Sixers, what was it, the Lakers, the Clippers? I don't even remember. But the report was like he went up to 3 teams and he was like, when am I going to get to play with you guys? And he was like within earshot of his teammates, apparently. And I'm not even going to go into it too in detail because, like, Oladipo's sister was like, hey, this is BS. And then she shifted blame onto Miles Turner. And then Miles Turner was like, no, it's not like that, right directly at her in a tweet. So whatever is going on in Indiana is a freaking mess. But I'm not going to pin all of that on Oladipo. The thing that makes me leery on him is that he just simply isn't as good a player anymore after his injury. If he didn't have the same like serious leg injury that he sustained, I'm sure like this whole mess in Indiana wouldn't even be a mess. They'd be like one of the elite teams.
Yeah.
But that's just not what happened. That's just not how it played out. So now we're going to have to like, I don't want to be the team that's like left holding the bag if we trade for him and he disappoints, so that's my
the Mavs have done this, on and off for this for like the last 20 years, right? They'll like take on reclamation projects. And I'm all for that. Like look at Tyson Chandler. Tyson Chandler was considered a bust before he came to Dallas, right? And he ended up becoming an integral part to that championship team. Obviously, that's the highest example of somebody outperforming expectations.
Right.
And on the other hand, you can name so many people. Jay, you want to...
The Mavs have had a pretty good track record of reclamation projects. I mean, I think, but the common denominator with all of them is like they did not give assets of like consequential value to the other team. Like you talk about Tyson Chandler, like who'd they trade? They traded Eric Dampier, who was like past his prime. Like he was like 35 years old at that point. They traded Matt Carroll. Eduardo Nahara. So like none of those guys were like of particularly high value to the Mavericks. Like even if Tyson Chandler, played like only 15 minutes a game, he would have still been an upgrade over Eric Dampier. I mean, because Haywood was supposed to be the starter that year anyways. Like it was just a bonus that Tyson ended up being so good.
Yeah.
But, to your point, I just don't think Oladipo falls under that reclamation project category just because like look at who you have to give to the Pacers in that trade, and it would undoubtedly have to be Tim Hardaway Jr. for the sole reason of matching salary, right? Like Tim Hardaway Jr. is making around $20 million this upcoming year, and I think that's around what Oladipo is making, probably a little bit more. So there's no way you can make that trade without including Hardaway, unless you wanted to trade, DeLon and Dwight Powell. But again, like that's not enough value to offer the Pacers.
That, and I mean, 2 years ago when Oladipo came to Indiana and really had that breakout year after his year with OKC, he's kind of supernovaed, but he was also kind of being that combo guard for that team. And I can understand why Mavs fans look at that and are saying, oh yeah, he fits the need of like a guy who can shoot, a guy who can play make, a guy who can defend. The injury history, honestly, the Mavs cannot gamble on another person who could have an injury that will stop them from being in the playoffs. Because if KP's already going to be out for a series against a really, really good team in the West, you need somebody next to Luka who is not going to basically be just chucking shots. You need somebody who can create offense. And right now, I think probably the only person that we had in the playoffs was Seth Curry and Trey Burke. Right?
Yeah,
and as well as they played, like that's just not enough. Like those guys are not going to be able to beat all 30 teams in the NBA. They just won't.
They're undersized guards. Like that's another thing. Like the Mavs need size and they need skill with that size. And so, as good as Seth and Trey Burke were in the playoffs or in the bubble, like you said, that's not going to cut it because they're just not big enough at the end of the day, right? They can only do so much.
Yeah. And the more touches you give them, the more likely you're going to end up getting turnovers at that pace of play at the very least. The last two guys that we have on the unsubstantiated rumor list are Spencer Dinwiddie and Drew Holiday. I think all three of us kind of like these two guys just as players. Definitely more than Oladipo as a move. But what do you think about specifically Spencer Dinwiddie? Because we do know he was like crowdsourcing where he was going to play next year.
Wait, hold up.
He's like Kyrie Light in terms of his Galaxy.
Hold up. I thought the unsubstantiated rumor list was all the guys we mentioned so far, Dinwiddie, Holiday, but I thought Buddy Hield as well.
There was
I thought there was actual interest in Buddy Hield, wasn't there?
Okay.
So there was like
person,
yeah, there was a tweet today by somebody named, I think, Landon Buford. I'm not very familiar with his work, but from what I have seen from people that he's like a regular at Mavs games who covers the team. So he put out an article today that suggested that Buddy Hield wants out of Sacramento, which I think is not a surprise. I think everybody knows that. But that Dallas is his preference to land,
Makes sense.
Sacramento. And it does make a lot of sense considering he basically lives here in the offseason. He trains in Dallas. So.
And his shooting will be good next to Luka, just straight up. Like, the question is whether do we think that him playing next to Luka is going to give him the type of career year that Tim just had? I think that's the main question you got to ask because Hield isn't a good defender. So,
Yeah,
Tim is a better defender than Hield for sure.
yeah.
definitely. I think kind of the commonality between all these trade targets we've talked about, except for maybe Drew Holiday, is they're all pretty solid offensive players, but don't bring much on defense.
Yeah.
And in the case of Oladipo,
Yes.
I'm not sure you're getting either of them.
And not even sure you're getting Oladipo, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I were the Mavs, I'd stay away from him. I don't think he's someone they should be pursuing.
Yeah.
If he goes anywhere, probably Miami, I'd feel.
Okay.
They can have him.
Wait, who?
Oladipo.
Oh, you think Oladipo's going to Miami? I can see that. I can see that. That team's a bunch of dogs. That'd actually be kind of fun to watch, honestly.
Yeah.
Spencer Dinwiddie, obviously being able to play the combo guard is a pretty big thing. He's taller than Seth Curry, obviously. I think the offensive combination of him as like a sixth man, along with, the pieces that we kind of already have, could be really good for the bench lineup. It could make the offense a lot better. That being said, the defense is a huge thing, man. This team needs a playmaker and a defender, and it's a lot easier to get. It's a lot easier to make that fit when you have one guy that can do both. And that brings us to Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday obviously is the rumor mill guy because, all of the suggestions say that he wants to go to a surefire contender. And as much as Mavs fans know that the Mavs are contending for a championship next year, I don't think the national media are necessarily going to put it in that position. So we don't necessarily know if the Mavs are on that list for Drew. But what do you think could make that deal go through with the Pelicans?
To make it go through, we would have to be probably the first ones to approach them with a serious offer. And that, I mean, they probably have already been getting plenty of offers just behind the scenes that we don't know because this technically isn't supposed to be happening.
Yeah.
So I don't know. If we were the first ones to get in on the messages with the Pelicans and be like, slide into their DMs and be like, hey, do you want Tim Hardaway Jr. or whatever?
Yeah.
And give them a serious offer. That would be a starting point. Secondly, if we were willing to part if we were willing to part with significant team capital, like our players and draft picks, that would, especially draft picks, if we have any to spare, that would go a long way. It would probably take both 18 and 31. And then third, I'm not sure. It's basically up to them. If they have to weigh their options, they have no shortage of suitors. So
yeah,
kind of a pipe dream, but I guess crazier things can happen. Maybe if things just break the right way and other teams get players that they might prefer over Holiday, and then suddenly it's just a bunch of bad luck for the Pelicans, and they're like, hey, this Mavericks package isn't too bad. Then
that, or maybe they don't want draft picks from a team like Brooklyn or LA because they don't think that those relatively recent, seasons indicate that they will be bad anytime soon.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Holiday's probably the most pursued trade target out there right now, I think, just because of his skill set and what he would bring to a contending
and
team.
his contract.
His contract, yeah, I think he's in the final year of a 5-year, or maybe he's in the second to last year of his contract that he signed in 2017. I know in 2017 the Mavs were, interested in him. Of course, I think they were just ended up being leveraged for him to get a max deal with New Orleans. But I'm sure they are interested in Holiday. I just don't know what that bidding war would be, and if the Mavs have the ammo to compete with teams like the Celtics or the Nuggets, who either have good draft picks in the case of Boston or good young talent in the case of the Nuggets.
I'm scared of both of those teams for sure. That being said, because this draft is so volatile and there's so many trades that could be made, and because trading opens up at noon tomorrow, honestly, the landscape of all of the moves that we're thinking about could change like this. So
yeah, and another thing that just dropped this morning was the December 15th and January 15th trade deadlines for newly signed players still exist. So there could be a case where a team signs a guy just to trade him, like
Hmm.
in a month. If like say if one team wants a guy but can't sign him with the cap, like another team might sign that player and they might just come to an agreement that like when the clock strikes December 15th, we'll trade him to you and you give us the guy that we want. So
Well,
that definitely could happen too. So
yeah.
I think the bottom line is the landscape is going to be changing a lot from now until like basically when the season starts on December 22nd.
Yeah.
This is gonna be crazy. It's gonna be crazy. Oof.
Hey, before we move on, I just was kind of stuck on a comment you made, Rohan.
Yeah.
You mentioned the positives for Spencer Dinwiddie, and you said something about how he was a sixth man and he'd be able to really mesh well with the bench. Like, yeah, I totally agree with that, but I'm just going to clarify, like, are you looking, if we brought in Spencer Dinwiddie, would you be looking to start him or bring him off the bench as a sixth man?
I'm not sure. I think in the playoffs, he would work really, really well with the bench. That's my main point. Every single time that I'm looking at these players, I'm honestly just going back to that Clippers series and the bubble and going, what does that team need to get them to a more consistent place?
Yeah, I think if you acquire Dinwiddie, he would be a starter, but I think he would be the kind of starter that you might take out earlier in the quarter and then give him more run with the bench. And I think that wouldn't be a bad thing. The bench, lacks sort of like a lead guard, and he could definitely fill that.
Especially if you end up like trading Tim Hardaway Jr. for him, you can start him at the shooting guard, maybe take him out earlier than you take out Luka or KP, bring him in after Jalen Brunson is kind of warmed up a little bit, and now you have two guys warmed up playing together, and you know how much Rick loves that three-guard lineup. I think Spencer Dinwiddie's at least at a good size to play that position. I'd rather have him than, honestly, I'd rather have him than like Fred VanVleet, even though I love Fred VanVleet as a player. He's just too undersized for this team.
Yeah.
We don't need a third undersized guard.
Exactly.
Well, never say never with Rick Carlisle.
I really wish Muggsy Bogues was in the league today. I think he and Rick Carlisle will get along really well. So now this moves us to trade targets that we want to pursue. And I know we talked about a couple in the pre-show, but last season the Mavs almost swung a blockbuster deal for Goran Dragic. And I don't know what y'all's opinions are on it because that was a really long time ago, but what would you think about aiming and angling for Dragic as the big move this offseason?
Yeah, I think it would be a good move. I think it would feel a bit underwhelming like it did last year too, although in retrospect I would have been happy if they got him, but just given his like age and injury history, especially with the injury he suffered in the finals, like I'm not sure if he could be an immediate contributor, and then you also contextualize that with the fact that KP may not even be available for the start of the season. It would be a bit of a gamble, but if you would tell me that he would come back and stay healthy, I definitely think it would be a solid move, and it gives Luka a chance to play with like one of his mentors, which is always good to keep the franchise star happy.
Yeah, Goran can pretty much score from anywhere on the floor, so I don't think there's an offensive reason not to like him. Fazal, go ahead.
For sure. Like, as far as he displayed this playoffs, he was playing some of the best basketball of his life. And the only thing that was not great was him injuring his plantar fascia at the very end of the season. But that's not like a long-term injury. That's something he'll recover from. So I do feel okay about him going forward. It's just he's old, has always been a little injury prone. That's always going to be a concern with him. But with the money we would maybe give him like the MLE. I feel very good about that if we were able to acquire.
Yeah, that is true. I think that's an underrated weapon that the Mavs have this offseason is like the full mid-level exception, because they can make like a quote unquote big trade by utilizing any of the guys on their roster right now that are under contract. But regardless of what they do with that, they'll still have that $9 million mid-level exception, and that opens up like a world of possibilities for them. They haven't had that in a while. Maybe last offseason they did, but they sort of chose to like split it up between the DeLon acquisition and Seth Curry, so they didn't actually truly use it.
Yeah, that's more than fair. I don't know about the age question because I think there's two ways that the issue of the age of a player can kind of hurt a team. One is if the player's slow, kind of like Dirk in those last few years. It really slows down the team, and it changes the way that they're playing. But I think in this case, Goran, even though that is still an injury in the finals, like Fossil said, I don't think it's a serious thing that's going to slow him down next season. Maybe it'll keep him out for a couple weeks, maybe a month, but yeah, MLE, pretty good deal. You could do significantly worse, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you got him for the mid-level exception, that would be a big win for them, assuming they made another move in conjunction to that.
Gang sounds.
John Wall.
I always feel so weird, doing the Dirk 3 as like, this is just my regular greeting. Like,
right.
I'm just like, hey, what's up, dude? And like, one time, Hoodie Allen was at a party, and I just like walked to the party. I was like, hey, what's up, dude? And he looked at me like I was fucking insane. Like, why are you saying hi to me? And is that a gang sign? and in that moment, I've never felt like more of a minority. Okay.
When Dirk does this, that's a gang sign, man.
It straight up is. Locked and loaded, baby. All right. Speaking of locked and loaded, we're back to our targets. We got him in the scope, Jets. We got him in the scope. So, obviously, there's one guy that I think Mavs Twitter brought up during the playoffs that all of us agree is the best decision the Mavs could make.
Giannis Antetokounmpo.
You're getting ahead of us. You're getting ahead of us by at least 30 minutes. We're talking about Jeremy Grant, member currently of the Denver Nuggets, but a extremely versatile wing who can defend, stretch the floor, and kind of great fit within what the Mavs are trying to do. So what do you think, first off, about what he's worth? And do you think it's feasible for the Mavs to get him this offseason?
Well, what he's worth is between $15 and $20 million, I would say, considering the contracts that other players have and are about to receive. That's absolutely what Jeremy Grant deserves, and he's been improving basically, I think, year in, year out the past couple of seasons. So it would be, I think he's, as far as high money free agents go, he might not have the highest ceiling, but he's got one of the higher ceilings, and he's a really safe bet, I would say. So yeah.
Yeah, and he's like relatively young. I think he's only like 25 or 26, so he fits in long term. Right. As far as feasibility, I'm not totally sure because I think most people expect him to re-sign with the Nuggets, but he's the type of player where I'm like, if something goes wrong with their negotiations and it becomes clear that he's going to become a free agent, if I were, running the Mavericks, I would be okay with overpaying for him because I think he's probably like, a perfect fit. He checks a lot of boxes in terms of shooting, athleticism, and defense. And
for the Mavs fans at home that think, hey, $15 million or something more than that for Jeremy Grant is an overpay. Look at what we're paying. Look at what we're paying DeLon Wright. Okay, then look at what we're paying. Look at what we were paying Dwight Powell like 2 years ago when we signed that contract, right? A lot of people looked at that and were like, why are you giving him that much money? He really hasn't proven anything yet. And now he's like an integral piece of the offense, right? So I do think it's a safe bet, and hell, overpaying for Jeremy Grant, somebody that versatile,
it's worth it. I think like if you have to go above like 20, if that's what it takes, I feel like that's what you should do it, because like his value is probably not going to tank too much. Like let's say you get a commitment from Giannis next offseason that he wants to sign in Dallas. Like I don't think anyone would balk at trading for Jeremy Grant. You will have a trade partner for him, and you could attach a draft pick or something to sweeten the pot for him. But I mean, I think
he's played on good teams for like the past 3 or 4 years, right? OKC, and did he spend only 1 year in Denver or 2?
This is his only year with Denver, I believe.
Okay.
He was good with OKC though.
Yeah, he really had some great minutes with OKC. So I don't think that this is a situation where you're overpaying for somebody like, no offense, Harrison Barnes, who just really can't live up to that contract. I think the contract that you give a guy like Jeremy Grant really only shows its value based on how good he's going to be next to an already good team. That's kind of what you're paying for. And it is going to cost a premium to get him. So got to be ready for that.
Yeah, they definitely don't have the cap space to pay him like that. So I think you would have to work out a sign and trade or something. That's really the only way it could work. So that's why I don't really like the chances of that happening, unless it just becomes abundantly clear that Denver is not going to retain him.
He's basically this free agency's version of Malcolm Brogdon.
That's a really good comparison. Let's hope it goes the exact same way.
For sure.
So in terms of targets, I think the last one that we were talking about was Serge Ibaka. And I think that one has a lot of substance to it. So obviously, Serge Ibaka and the Mavericks have, a storied history, one that is really punctuated by Dirk just repeatedly sunning him while he scored 40 points multiple times in the Western Conference Finals in 2011. And now the Mavericks have emerged as a suitor for Serge Ibaka. Seems like he may be leaning to leaving Toronto.
Yes. So the one thing I have with Ibaka is that there's a lot of chatter going on that he might be taking the mid-level exception, and we just talked about how that was a substantial amount of money. It's almost $10 million a year, but at the same time for Ibaka, I feel like he definitely commands more than that. So I'm not sure where people are getting that figure from.
I think it's just delusional Laker fans. I would be very, very, very surprised if he settled for the mid-level exception.
Yeah. You didn't have to go that hard at Lakers fans, dude. We know that they don't know how to calculate the cap. It's okay.
And neither did Rob Pelinka.
And the funniest part about that joke is that Rob Pelinka was an agent.
Yeah, I know. That's the only reason they hired him. But kudos to him. I think
it's all about relationships, man.
Figured it out. Yeah.
Yeah. If you have the relationships, you can make.
That's why the Knicks hired Leon Rose, because he was an agent. Because they're the Knicks, I'm sure they'll figure out how to impede his connections from actually working. But that's what it's all about.
Damn, dude. The Mavs are finally not tanking, and Jay is just the most toxic dude to all other franchises.
Dude, I am extremely toxic to basically every other team except the Mavs. That's all. All my friends say that to me too, and it's I don't know. I don't apologize for anything. You would do it too.
To be fair, yeah. I'm exactly right there with you, Jay, because while the Mavs were sucking, nobody gave us sympathy.
Exactly. Now we have one of the best players in the league, right? It's time that we let it be known.
Exactly. Jackass time, demon time.
Yeah. I remember all through high school, everyone was like, "Oh, Dirk is old. He sucks. He sucks." I'm like, how do you like us now? This is my time.
Bro. I may have told you this story, Jay, before. I don't know if I told Fazil this story. It's very old. It's from when the Mavs won the championship. Now, we were in 8th grade, and it was the end of that. It was the end of that year, obviously. And at the time, I was one of probably the only Mavs fans that I knew at my school. Everyone else was a Thunder fan or a Lakers fan, bandwagoning to all hell. And that's fine. Those teams are fun to watch. But, there was just me sitting there sad because, the Mavs are just, it's like a ritual thing. You love watching the Mavs. You hate watching them lose in the first round all the time. And everyone just starts thinking, oh, they're never going to win. And then when they finally got to that playoffs, every single series, I remember discussions with people around me that were constantly like, "Oh yeah, no, but they're definitely gonna lose to Brandon Roy, right? Oh no, dude, there's no way they make it past the Lakers." And then once they went against OKC, the same guys were like, "Oh, but I'm actually an OKC fan, so like, there's no way they're beating the Thunder." And then
I feel like we knew way too many OKC fans back then. OKC fans.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so yeah, I mean, not being a bandwagon fan, I understand it, guys. It's so easy to just be toxic as shit because most fans do not know the pain. They do not know the pain of Darren Collison, OJ Mayo,
Like, yeah, they don't know the pain.
Chris Kaman, and Jose Calderon, and Elton Brand.
Fucking
Yeah.
Troy Murphy, Eddie Curry, Derek Fisher,
Mike James.
That team sucked. That team was it like? I can't tell you how painful it was to watch because like it was just one of those things where you would watch the game and like you would know that like this is not going anywhere. Like if they win, it would be a good day, and if they lost, like you would expect it. And it's like you knew that they weren't gonna like do anything in the playoffs or even make the playoffs, and it's like
I had to root for fucking Yi Jianlian.
I know, man. Like we had to get excited over that stuff. When the Mavs signed OJ Mayo, I was like legitimately excited about
Yeah,
it.
right.
Because maybe there was reason for
Well,
it.
for the first like 20 games of the season, the dude was averaging 30 points a game, and then Dirk
was a
came back.
beast.
I remember I had an OJ Mayo jersey, dude.
He was good, you know. He was a good player. I was surprised he fell to them, but like, you know, after a while, like he sort of fell off a bit, and then it was like, well, if they don't have Dirk and OJ Mayo sucks, then like this team isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like I have like erased that season, the 2012 season, from my mind completely. Like,
Hey,
I
one
do
good
not
thing.
Think about it.
One good thing happened that season. Do you remember the last game of the season? I believe it was.
I think so.
Darren
That was-
Collison hit a full court shot of some kind. I forget whether it was to tie a game or what.
the game against OKC, like in December
Yeah.
of that year, where Darren
the
Collison,
one-handed-
one
Yeah.
minute with like 0.1 seconds, which was definitely one of the craziest shots I've ever seen.
Freaking Sean Marion inbounded the lob to him, and he caught it and was like one hand.
Yeah, no, that was crazy. That gassed me up so much in high school. I was like, this team is so underrated, man. We're going to the playoffs.
I mean, that was me too. And to Darren Collison's credit, I don't think he was a bad player. I don't think any of them, like OJ Mayo or Collison, were bad players, but just the circumstances around that season were not particularly.
And the
good.
team comp wasn't good.
Yeah,
it just
the
wasn't.
chemistry was off like the entire time.
That and it
especially-
was like a rush decision, right? Wasn't that the year that they were trying to go after CP3 or Darren and Dwight?
The year before. I think that was just the Mavs undoing, like in the the mid
Yeah.
2010s was just like they were always chasing a guy like next year, so they would only invest in like 1-year veterans. And I think as a fan, it was just painful to sort of watch the gradual decline of the team like in slow motion because like Dirk was never gonna get any younger, right?
Yeah.
He was only getting older and like
Right.
so it was just tough to watch. I mean, they had a couple of good years in their like 2013 with Monte. Dirk also had a redemption season that year, so that was fun. The following year was also pretty fun until they got Rondo.
That's something that we actually do just need to like erase from all of history.
Yeah, I still like cannot believe that happened.
Jay, do you remember the fact that you gave me tickets for my birthday to go see that game?
Oh yeah, dude, that's crazy. I had tickets to that, to the game, and for those who don't know what Rowan's referring to, it's like there was a game against the Raptors in that year. I think it was
February 24th.
Yeah, February of 2015, and that was sort of where things went downhill for Rondo and the Mavs. Like I think Rick was like telling Rondo to call timeout after a made basket, and Rondo was like waving him off and like ignoring him. And then like finally Rick just like stepped in and called the timeout himself. And then they started like yelling at each other, from across the other side of the court. And apparently you could hear it like everywhere in the arena. It was that bad.
Yeah.
It led to the famous stare down of Tim McMahon, the post-game press conference. And I think Rondo was suspended for like the following game by the Mavs. So after that point, it just went downhill from there.
So is that a Mavericks game or a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode?
Honestly, with my hairline now, it's very difficult to differentiate between me and Larry David. So, and absolutely the worst part of that season was they were just on a roll. Like, that was the last season where a team built around Dirk was really just destroying and torching the league like that.
Yeah, they were much like this past season's Mavs. They were on pace to, set the NBA record for offensive rating. But then once they traded for Rondo, that just all went to hell.
ASMR sound effects brought to you by Reunion Lights Media.
We should do some ASMR. I'm a big proponent of it.
Okay, well, we got completely off the topic, so I do want to keep us on the topic of Serge Ibaka a little bit and these targets, but I think we did make the point that we think he would be a good fit. That being said, any of these guys signed on multi-year deals would be much preferable from the Mavs history that we have all witnessed.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway from all these years between 2011 and 2018 or maybe 2016 is that you can sign whoever you want to multi-year deals because there's always going to be a taker the following year. Say that you do get a commitment from your top free agent choice, there will always be a taker. I mean, look at the Warriors with Kevin Durant. They, of course they got lucky with Steph Curry's contract being so little, but there was a taker for Andrew Bogut and Harrison Barnes. Who was it? It was us. It was the Mavericks. So, and the Rockets did that too with Jeremy Lin and all of them. So the lesson you have to learn from this is that just go for it now, worry about tomorrow later.
Yeah.
To use a dirty phrase, shit or get off the pot.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Like we were saying in, I think, our first episode of the Mavs Film Room podcast, check it out on Spotify if you haven't already. Before the playoffs started, we admitted the Mavs are not on the clock. They're playing with house money this season. This next season is the first season where the clock is now ticking. Yeah. So it's really important that they make moves to improve this team's quality. And I think we've listed out a good number of players, but I think there's one player that all of us are kind of looking at as the white whale of not only this free agency, but maybe all of the free agencies combined. You know what I mean?
Well, before we get to that, there's a white player that I want to talk about because I feel like he's worth mentioning, considering that the Mavs almost made a trade for him back in February during the trade deadline. And they've been linked to him peripherally the last few weeks, and that player is Danilo Gallinari of the Oklahoma City Thunder, who's set to become a free agent this offseason.
I am not as big of a fan of Gallinari as I think other people are. I think he's a good fit on this roster because he would be playing a stretch four. That being said, how much are you paying him?
Yeah, that's the thing. The Mavs don't really have the money to sign him outright as a free agent for what he would want, unless he was really willing to take the mid-level exception.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Didn't Gallinari recently say that he made some comment about his contract situation, right? He said something about he wants to win now, right?
That's true. I think Miami is another team that really wants Gallinari because they were trying to get him during the trade deadline also, and I think they almost pulled it off. It was just a question of signing him to an extension, which I think teams who were trying to trade for him, including the Mavs and the Heat, were sort of a little bit wary about, which is why it didn't work. With Gallinari, I think he would be a good fit for this team just in terms of the shooting that he provides.
Especially with KP moving to the 5 at the end of last season.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's always been one of my favorite players in the league. Just from the time he came into the league, he's had a unique skill set. Just a cool guy.
Except for the year where he was on the Clippers, right? You didn't like him when he was on the Clippers, did you?
Yeah, I didn't like anyone who was on the Clippers. But I hardly remember him on the Clippers, honestly.
It was one season.
Yeah. But I do think the Mavs don't need to really invest in the starting big this offseason. But I mean, if Gallinari is the worst player you can get, I don't think it would be a bad thing. But I think you do have to be a little bit concerned about his injury history and what that means. He's 32 years old, so not old, but not young either.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. For me, I wouldn't put him on my top 3, quite honestly. But that being said, I'm not a huge fan of Danilo Gallinari anyways. But hey, if he's coming here for, if what Fossil says holds up and, he really wants to win now, he's willing to take the MLE or something, knock it out of the park. I don't think it's a bad fit.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. All right, let's get to the guy you were itching to
on
talk
to
about.
the non-white whale.
Yeah, because the first white whale for us at Mavs Film Room was Luka Doncic. You may be able to look at our Twitter account and see our pinned tweet is Luka Doncic confirmed, and it is a screenshot of a DM with the great Mark Cuban himself, then Luka's draft profile, and then another portion of Luka's draft profile. And if you connect all of the highlights, it creates an Illuminati triangle. Okay, and we posted that before the draft happened. Okay, so we definitely called Luka Doncic coming to the Mavericks. Okay, something that don't look on Twitter. Do not try to confirm this. Nobody else predicted it. Trust me. Nobody else predicted it. Nobody. So, given our habit of predicting amazing blockbuster moves for the Dallas Mavericks, what are our predictions
of Blockbuster? I'm just kidding. We don't predict.
I still cry about that every night, man. One time my dad left me in a Blockbuster for an hour and 30 minutes and just completely forgot to come back and get me, dude.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it was the weirdest moment of my life. No.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so sorry for the interjection. That's gonna stay in, but yeah, whatever. No, what are your thoughts about Giannis? Do you think he's genuinely thinking of coming to the Mavs if he leaves Milwaukee?
Yes, I've stood by this now for the last few months. I think if he does leave and go anywhere, I think the Mavericks are going to be where he goes. I mean, he clearly has an appreciation for Luka and Kristaps. Aside from the fact that they're all European-born players, but I think like of all the teams that are vying for his services right now, the Mavericks have the best longevity, given that Luka would be 23, I think, when Giannis is a free agent. So clearly still very young.
Jesus Christ.
So, yeah, it's crazy. So if Giannis wants to go to a winning situation that will take him to the end of his career, I mean, I think the choices couldn't be clearer, And that's not even to mention some of the history that the Mavs have with Giannis. Obviously, I think it's a pretty well-known fact that Donnie Nelson was looking at Giannis very hard, in the 2013 draft and wanted to pick him. Of course, Mark Cuban overruled that decision to save like $400,000 to try and sign Dwight Howard. Obviously didn't happen, but a thing that I learned recently from I think an article that I read was that spring in 2013, Donnie Nelson actually moved to Greece, for a few months to be closer to Giannis and scout him. So there is like some relationship with Giannis and his family, dating back to then. And of course, they picked Giannis's brother a couple years ago in 2018 with Kostas. And I think there was an athletic story that came out a couple days ago that also talked about how when Giannis was training, I'm not sure if this was like when he was about to be drafted or after that, but Rick Carlisle was around and always tried to come to the daily training sessions with Giannis. And it got to the point where Giannis moved to the other side of the court when Rick came. He's like, I just want to work with you. He's referring to his trainer. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to work with that man. And then his trainer's like, that man is Rick Carlisle. And Giannis is like, who's Rick Carlisle?
Hey, well, Giannis is about to get a up close and personal look at who Rick Carlisle is.
No, you know what the funniest part of that story would be? If it happened this year. Who's Rick Carlisle in 2020?
Hey, it actually wouldn't be too far from something that could actually happen because we all know the NBA is just rife with tampering. So
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, if the Mavs end up pulling off this Giannis move, there's no way that you can't say that this was years in the making.
Exactly.
I mean, they drafted his brother, they traded Shake Milton, who's actually a good player, to draft Kostas Antetokounmpo, who's not even on the roster anymore. So that just shows you that.
Well, that being said, Kostas Antetokounmpo is a champion, and Luka Doncic is not a champion. So I would say shut your fucking mouth.
Rings, baby.
Rings,
All right,
Oda.
Rohan Shapiro.
That answers the question of whether you think Giannis is actually thinking of coming here. And yes, that story is obviously hilarious. My question comes down to this. Do you think the Bucks can put anybody around Giannis this year that is going to convince him to stay? And what by that I mean, is there anybody that once they make the move, you think he's going to sit there and go, I'm probably going to be here for a couple of years now?
In a single player, I don't think so. Not anymore, because it looks like all the big name players, like most notably CP3, are going to other places. So in terms of a big superstar splash, I'm not sure if that's going to happen, because this free agency class was always going to be weak, and I don't know if there's any established superstars or stars with contracts that are still ongoing who are, vulnerable to get moved. But when it comes to just free agency acquisitions, this is, in terms of the mid-tier talent, this is a pretty stacked class. No superstars, but a lot of mid-tier talent.
Yeah.
If the Bucks can make a lot of moves to gain some of these players at the expense of, I don't know, an Eric Bledsoe or a Brook Lopez, that could be enough. If the Bucks come out next season and they really truly are killing fools, and it's you get that air that this time for sure they're unbeatable, and it looks like they'll be like that in the playoffs. Yeah, I think that could be enough. But it's at this point it's still very much up in the air. It is.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got a deadline on December 21st or something to sign the Supermax extension. So, I mean, okay. if he doesn't sign that, I would think that he's gone after that point. Because like you mentioned, I think, they're all maxed out in terms of their cap. So their only hope of upgrading is if they can pull off a deal that involves Eric Bledsoe or Brook Lopez, which seems unlikely at this point, but who knows?
Yeah, and also I don't think Brook Lopez is a guy that they need to necessarily move.
They overpaid for him, so that's another thing too. Like, I'm not sure how attractive he is as an asset.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that they move on from him and get something better that convinces Giannis to stay. I do think it's a good point that they need to really build up their roster, and they definitely need to get rid of Eric Bledsoe, because he didn't want to be in Phoenix, and now Milwaukee doesn't want him to be there. So
we just need a tweet to make it official from one of the two parties.
Yeah, Eric Bledsoe needs to tweet, "They don't want me to be here."
Yeah, no, they need to do one of those player takeovers and have Eric Bledsoe break the news on the official account.
Where will Giannis be playing in the 2021 season?
Dallas, baby.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Mavs, man. I have never been more convinced of anything in my life. And I'm sure now that I say that, it's not going to happen and people are going to be giving me shit for this forever. But, it has one of my good friends' blessings, who's a Giannis fan. So he wants it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I love watching Giannis play. I remember, I think 2017 or 2016, there was a Christmas Day game against the Knicks, and he just went off, and that was the first full game I saw of Giannis play. And the second I saw that, I was like, I want this dude on the Mavs so fucking bad. Like, I cannot measure it. That being said, I understand Mike's reticence and his, I don't know, karmic philosophy. And maybe I only understand this because I'm brown. But yeah, I mean, there is the idea that, you go after him, he doesn't come here, and then, the karma is it comes back around with Luka. But from my perspective, it's go all in. Giannis is a guy that you have to go all in for. That team composition is much too perfect for anybody to sit there and say, no, this is too OP. Like, did you think Kevin Durant and the Warriors were like, no, this is too OP, right?
Yeah, no, they're just like, fuck it, we're gonna build the best team possible, it's the NBA. There's no feelings.
Yeah. Fuck your feelings.
Exactly.
It's all about rings, Ernie. It's all about rings. And you know what? I have been the first one to say that KD's rings don't mean as much as Dirk's, and obviously that poses the question that if that is the super team, will Luka's rings have the same effect? And I would say yes. And honestly, that's not a bad thing. You know, like Dirk's one championship is probably the most like impactful in history.
Yeah.
Certainly in our opinions, but like, I think not every championship needs to be the 2017 Cavs. Okay.
Exactly. You know.
Sometimes it's just about building that dynasty, and Dallas has never had a dynasty before.
They could have had one with Nash and Dirk, but like, I mean, as impactful as Dirk's championship was, like, you know, they only managed to win one, and I think like if you have the chance to win multiple championships, you have to go for it, like irrespective of the perception about it. And I think the circumstances would be a little bit different, you know, unless the Mavs like go 73-9 next season, like Giannis would not be stepping into, you know, that kind of roster.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, like, you know, let's not beat around the bush. Like he would be joining, like, you know, arguably the best group of talent that he could. But, you know, it is what it is. You know, if you have the chance to do it, you just got to do it.
Well, even that's debatable, right? He could always ask for a sign and trade to Golden State, you know, like all those Warriors fans constantly are putting out in the press.
Or to Miami, as those delusional Heat fans are putting out into the internet.
Yeah.
I don't know what about Florida makes anybody think that like Giannis wants to live there. Like he says he loves Milwaukee. Like that's already like a really weird thing to say. Like Fossil and I have been to Milwaukee. Like it's very weird to say that you love Wisconsin, and we're from Texas. So so that being said, yeah, I don't think there's going to be that issue that we have with a lot of free agents or big free agents in Dallas where, like, you know, they really want to go to a big market like LA or New York, like a Carmelo or, you know, somebody like that.
Yeah, and I think with Giannis, like, when he says he loves Milwaukee, I'm sure he, like, I mean, it's his NBA home. Like, I mean, this is, like, the only home that he's known outside of Greece. So it's, like, I'm sure whatever decision that he makes, like, if he leaves the Bucks, it's going to be an extremely difficult decision for him to make.
Definitely.
You know, I mean, he's the type of guy who's like Dirk in that he wants to see these kind of things through. Like, he wants to be the reason that Milwaukee wins. But, I mean, as we've seen, this is a different era in the league now. And as much as players, like, want to be the guy that, you know, lives forever in a city's lore, like, ultimately, they want to win championships.
That, and I think there is a difference with the Bucks because the Mavs were obviously a much younger team who hadn't had a superstar like Dirk Nowitzki or a legend like Dirk Nowitzki in their franchise's history. The Bucks have had multiple legends throughout their illustrious history. That being said, obviously, like, if he feels love for Milwaukee, I mean, I totally get that. It reminds me a lot of the LeBron parallel, where obviously that was LeBron's hometown, basically in Cleveland, but he did say that going to Miami was like him going to college for 4 years, right? And I do think Giannis may find himself ready to make that step in about 6 months. And
yeah,
I think the Mavs are going to capitalize on that. And if he goes to the Heat, I will cry and cry and cry, and I'll probably delete my Twitter account.
I will never show my face in public if he goes to Miami.
Yeah, this finals was really, really painful for me to watch just because...
I didn't even watch it.
Well, I watched like minutes of games, okay? I didn't watch entire games. But the Heat versus Lakers, like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, I was starved for basketball, and my dad is a Lakers fan, so the games were on the TV 24/7. So I ended up watching them, but it was like, I couldn't enjoy shit, you know? Even when the games were close, I was like, all right, cool. Like, no adrenaline, no anxiety from watching a fucking close NBA Finals game. Just, all right, that's nice, cool, good basketball on my TV.
Yeah. I think the bubble and the lack of fans also had a lot to do with that. But, you know, like I tweeted the night the Lakers won, it was like Chick Hicks winning the Piston Cup in cars, you know, like nobody actually wanted that to happen. And nobody was happy when it did.
Okay, did y'all see the tweet that was talking about AD being the best power forward of all time?
Dude, I don't know if people are actually being serious.
Dude, no, they are being serious. I've learned this on other facets of Twitter. Like, you'll think people are trolling about things like politics or whatever. They're not trolling. They're 100% not trolling.
I've seen several of such tweets like, "Oh, is he better than like Tim Duncan?" or like, "Yeah, he's the greatest power forward ever." I'm like, let's slow down a second. He only won a championship because he teamed up with LeBron. Like, as good as he was.
Facts. There's literally no comeback to that, by the way. If you're listening, there's no comeback to that if you disagree with that. He only won a championship because he was with LeBron. And yes, AD and LeBron are great players, but it does dilute, their greatness, the greatness of like their individual achievements.
Yeah, like I think I saw a tweet that was sort of like, is Anthony Davis like the best like second option player ever? Like, he's probably like, I mean, maybe not ever, but like I think the point is that like
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, like what the fuck?
He's like a top 10 talent.
Yeah,
it's not good enough to be the best player on a championship team.
I mean,
which is sort of perplexing.
What?
But it's true.
Falzo, what'd you say?
I can agree with that. He's a top 10 talent. That's not good enough to be the best on a championship team.
Yeah. I think unfortunately we saw that in New Orleans because there was never a case where he just didn't have help. Like he had DeMarcus Cousins and Drew Holiday. Okay, like that's.
He had decent years of Eric Gordon and Tyreek Evans.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'll give him some benefit of the doubt. Like the Pelicans did screw up a lot, like in terms of surrounding him with talent. But at the end of the day, if you're a top 10 player, like you were expected to raise the floor of your team.
And he played extremely well individually. Okay, he did have like 45 and 20 rebound games, like night after night after night after DeMarcus got injured. But the team wasn't winning. It all comes down to the winning. I mean, it comes back to the same conversation we had about Zion in our last episode, right? I'm tired of giving players this like credit for greatness as if like you're adding something to their Hall of Fame resume and not really adjudicating the context of it,
Yeah. And then I think once he signed with Clutch Sports, it was over because like then he started becoming more of a symbol for like the player empowerment movement, and at that point you sort of got the sense that like his time was coming to leave the Pelicans, and then of course it did last offseason.
That and the tampering was telegraphed almost entirely. So.
Yeah, like there was only one team he wanted to play for, so it was bound to happen.
And you know what? That's honestly fine. I would say.
Let's just like not pretend that that's not the case.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's not pretend that LA somehow independently is just magically able to like land Anthony Davis. Okay.
One thing that I realized that we didn't do is we did not really talk about players that the Mavs like could target. I told Richie I would give him a shout out, but then we got.
Oh yeah, I wanted to give Richie a shout out when we were talking about the draft stuff. So yeah, I've been working on a secret project for Mavs Film Room. We are doing a collaboration with Mavs Draft for one of his scouting videos, and it's really cool, and it'll be out by the draft. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for that.
Yeah, shout out Richie P. And we were supposed to talk about this, but I asked him before the show today, like. Considering he's a draft expert and all, like who he felt would be the best, fits for the Mavs at picks 18 and 31. And, while I do think the Mavs will still trade 18, I think it's worth mentioning some guys that they could get at that pick. And he said that Josh Green, Desmond Bane, Tyrese Halliburton, and Jaden McDaniels at 18 were all, in his eyes, like, the best fits at that range. And at 31, he mentioned Elijah Hughes, Emmanuel Quickly, and Dan Oturu as some targets. And I have seen in some mock drafts Desmond Bane going like at pick 30. So I do wonder if he could fall into the second round.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Too.
Even with Richie's scouting, I think he's been on the rise. Plus, there was that viral clip of him just like knocking it out of the park on the NBA 3. And he's been pretty much the best one of those guys from the NBA 3 range in those drills for about a year. I mean, if you look at Mavs Draft's pinned tweet, it is him from a year ago. So I do think he's a better pick for 18. And honestly, based on what I've talked to Richie about, he seems like the guy that the Mavs should probably pick at 18.
I think so, because he's a 4-year guy from TCU. He has like NBA ready skills in his shooting. I've seen Josh Green, I think in the Ringer mock draft was where Bane was picked at 30, and they had Josh Green going to the Mavs. But if I'm not mistaken, Josh Green is a freshman, so that would just, by nature be sort of more of a project than a guy like Bane who could probably step in and be more of an immediate contributor. So I think Bane is probably my top guy for the Mavs.
Yeah. Obviously, you would probably be reaching up to pick him higher than you probably would need to. So maybe the Mavs, maybe Donnie pulls something out of a hat where he trades back 3 picks and somehow still gets the guy he wants. Who fucking knows?
Yeah, that would be good too.
Right. We could go for Sadiq Bey or Tyler Bey, one of those two. There's Alexei Pokachevsky, who's another project, very young and sort of a unicorn, but, everybody's like, oh, this guy's going to be the next big thing, even though he's really raw right now. So there's that, but I have a feeling the Mavs aren't so high on a guy like that right now, considering we're like in a pseudo win now mode. So yeah.
Yeah, I think if they make a draft pick, it's going to be a guy that they know can step in, like a Brunson or, they haven't picked, or I can't say Luka because he's a super.
He's one of a kind, yeah.
Yeah, basically a guy that when you pick him, they'll spend resources developing him, but it's not going to be like a guy who's like 1 year away or 2 years away. They don't have that kind of time.
Right.
Exactly. A really interesting tangent, and something that I've been thinking about just recently, is going back to that draft. There were stories that Luka was considering, and he was using his contract with Real Madrid as leverage if certain teams picked him. And I think that's something that we don't necessarily talk about in like the narrative of how Luka ended up here in the first place.
Yeah.
I do think that that's something that we have to really, really like key in on, because it tells us a lot. The teams at the beginning of the draft were definitely, there was not a situation where like you have the Warriors at number 2, right, or you have the Celtics at number 1. It's just,
yeah, that's the crazy thing, like thinking back on that. I mean, I think it was the Suns. There was all like there were, for each of the 3 teams ahead of the Mavs, or I guess
it was 4. It was the Suns, Kings, Hawks, and then Grizzlies.
Yeah. So for all of those teams, there was like one reason or another why they didn't want Luka or why it didn't work out. I mean, with the Suns, of course, it was, their owner, Robert Sarver, wanted to pick, DeAndre Ayton because he was like the local kid who played at Arizona. He felt like that would, attract fans to follow the team. Wasn't a bad pick, but not Luka. With the Kings, the most baffling move of all time, but I think that sort of stemmed from Vlade Divac's like personal beef with Luka's father.
Right.
Which is so cringe, dude.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to let like a potential top 10 player of all time, and that is what Luka's potential is, like just slip through your fingers because of a petty beef?
Yeah,
well,
and it's like
I know why. It's because
we're definitely cutting that out. Yeah, I don't want to like burn all of our bridges with Sacramento, dude. I'm cool with burning our bridges with like James Dolan, but like Vivek is kind of like, I feel like Vivek might give me amnesty if the Mavs fandom ever cancels me. So I'm gonna keep my relationships open.
Yeah, I mean the Kings got rid of Vlade, so I guess it's not all bad. But but speaking of beefs, I mean I think it was clear from the beginning that Luka did not want to play with Atlanta, and he made it clear through back channels and through his agent that was not a place where he wanted to land. To your point about using his European contract as leverage, and so I think speaking of beefs, like his agent is Bill Duffy, who was Steve Nash's agent way back in the day, and the Mavs and him had a beef just because Bill Duffy rightfully was mad at the Mavs for not retaining like his star client, and so that beef essentially went on for 14 years from 2004 to 2018. But ultimately the Mavs and Mark Cuban and Donnie Nelson made up with Bill Duffy because they were like, this is way too big of an opportunity to squander over a beef that we have with some guy's agent. And look at it now, like Bill Duffy is now kind of an ally for the Mavs, and I'm sure if the chance came, he would steer some of his clients to play with the Mavs.
And honestly, I don't think Bill Duffy was wrong for being mad and Mark Cuban for not picking up Nash. Like, that was just a bad decision. I mean, even Mark admits that now, but yeah, I actually have just like a random question. Do you think when Luka's contract ends with his current agency, he's going to Clutch Sports?
I don't think
Hope
so.
not.
You hope not.
I mean, I think he's clearly like, he's definitely not Dirk in the sense that I think, branding and stuff matters to him.
Yeah.
But, I think, and I do see stuff on Mavs Twitter about like, the clock is ticking on Luka because like, you never know these days with these star players, like what's going to happen. They say they want to be in a city, but like when the rubber meets the road, they will make this decision that offers them the best chance to win and the best chance to expand their brand, which oftentimes are are symbiotic these days.
And they know it's a business. They do. Yeah.
But with Luka, I think he is cut from a bit of a different cloth than some of these other American stars, in that, like, in Europe, there's, yes, there's branding and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, it's about winning. And, Luka has been about winning basically his entire life. The minute he stepped on the floor with Real Madrid, not only was he getting the personal accolades of, MVP, but like he led the team, to the Eurobasket championship. He led the Slovenian national team to the, or that was the Eurobasket championship.
And then the Liga ACB for Real Madrid.
Yeah. But my point is, from everything we've seen of Luka, it's been all about winning for him.
Yeah.
But of course, it's really hard to predict the future because, we would have said the same thing about Giannis, and look at us now. Like, we're almost convinced he's out of there. So.
Different situation slightly, because Luka just has the ball in his hands and he plays way differently. Like, he's given a whole other level of freedom here that I do think, as long as, the system is entirely built this way, I think there's not many teams that are going to go, oh, hey, we want to pick up Luka Doncic. Let's also give him the highest usage rate in league. Like, he's an amazing player, and I think every team understands that, but I don't think every team has the ability to do that, at least right now. But we'll see, obviously, when he's in his prime.
I mean, I think another big thing is that, like, nowadays the NBA media is so, like, focused on the transactions.
Yeah, I hate it.
Literally any player, like, they're always talking about, like, so many years in advance, like, what are they going to do? I mean,
every player's going to the Lakers. Every player's going to the Lakers.
I think LeBron's decision in 2010 really just changed the way that we cover, or not we, as in like the media covers the league, and how important transactions and future transactions are to like the draw of the NBA.
Yeah, and that, I mean, going back to the business thing, like, I do think the reason that the Mavs got Luka in the first place, obviously, first off, the Mavs knew that Luka was the best player in the draft, bar none. I don't think that's really debatable, but there's something that I brought that initial point up because of, and it's whenever we hear about a trade rumor for the Mavs, it doesn't happen, right? That's pretty much like always the way it goes. And the Luka trade is like one of the very few times where that was floated, by Tim McMahon, I believe. It might have been Mark Stein. And then it like came true on draft day. And the reason why I think, based on just like my casual research, is he did not want to be in Atlanta. He showed that he had the leverage for it, and because of that, teams were reticent. They were like, hey, he didn't, he may not really want to be here. And when Dallas puckered up and said, hey, we're here, we really want him, he's the best player in this draft, and we'll take all the risk that you guys aren't willing to take, I think that was just like the match made in heaven. But I think that's so rare. And if Luka was in any other position of like not being an international player, I don't think that's possible.
Yeah.
They certainly had the culture to facilitate, taking on another European player, and I think that was like what made it such a great fit.
Yeah. It is wild. It is wild to think about how far the Dallas Mavericks have come in 2 seasons. I mean,
yeah, man.
Remember when we were excited about Harrison Barnes, DeAndre Jordan, and Dennis Smith Jr.?
Good times. But of course, Luka was on that team, I think. But
He was, but we also thought that those guys around him would make that team a contender.
I know. Like,
or at least make the playoffs, you know?
It's crazy to think of how that season started and how it ended just with, like, you know, the trades that were made.
Fossil or Jay, you got to tweet something for the Mavs Film Room account, like how it started, how it's going. But Mavs edition.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, especially after this free agency period. Like, you got to get that ready.
Definitely.
And definitely a picture of like just like one of the random like tanking teams would definitely go a really long way to make it 10 times funnier.
Yeah,
because I think half of Mavs Twitter genuinely doesn't know who Mike James is.
Yeah.
And, oh my God, yeah, we didn't even talk about him, but yeah, he was a symbol of everything that was like frustrating about that year.
That 41-41 season.
41-41 in honor of number 41, Dirk. I'm just kidding. That was probably the worst way to ever honor his contributions to the franchise.
The worst way to honor Dirk. By the way, my favorite shirt. It's dry fit. It's actually my size, and I got it from the fucking American Airlines Center. That has never happened before. They always have like triple extra larges, dude. And it's like, it like fits me. It's breathable. You can work out in it. And on top of that, I'm pretty sure this is going to be like what Dirk's statue looks like. Like I'm 90% sure that's what it's going to look like.
Nice. It is a pretty nice shirt.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, it is 8:54 Central Time on November 15th, and we're about to enter what might be the most chaotic week in NBA history.
What's definitely going to be the most chaotic week in NBA history. I don't think you need to qualify it anymore, Jay.
That is true. We have no idea what's awaiting us after 12 Eastern tomorrow.
Well, we do have some idea. Like there's some deals that we already know. But,
yeah, like the Thunder trading Dennis Schroeder.
But the dominoes will fall, and we have no idea where that's going to go. So definitely stay tuned on Twitter, and stay positive. We've been seeing a little bit too much of negativity and just random assholery, which I'll definitely cut out that word, on Mavs Twitter. I get it. This is a stressful time. We're all thinking about Giannis. You know, we all smoking that Giannis white whale crack pipe. But, you know, sometimes you just need to breathe and meditate and realize, yo, we got Luka Doncic, Kristaps Porzingis on the same team, okay? Things are going to be fine.
And there's a vaccine presumably coming in the next 5 to 6 months, so can only go up from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna steal the vaccine shipment and take all the vaccines and drink them. And I'm gonna become an Antifa super soldier who gets everybody on the Mavericks. So that's what's gonna happen.
Fossil is gonna be patient zero for the antiviral resistant strain of COVID. Dude. That's another thing I'm cutting out. Great. Oh, okay. Who wants to outro episode 3 of the Mavs Film Room podcast?
I can try.
All right, give it a go, Jay. But if it's low energy, I will add a bullhorn sound effect in there.
Should I start with? I guess are you gonna keep the 8:54 p.m. part? Because I was like,
if you want to restate it, you can restate it.
That's okay. I think we already had a discussion about that. Okay, I'm gonna try. It might come out bad, but well, guys, that's all we got for you here with the 3rd episode of the Mavs Film Room podcast. As always, thanks for listening. We got a huge week ahead of us, and in just about a month, Mavs basketball will be back. Can't wait to watch the season with you and bring you more.
Absolutely cannot wait for the season to come back. It's such a quick turnaround.
Yeah, I just want to see Luka and Kristaps and whoever the fuck else just dominate some fools, and hopefully we can win like 60 games and go to the conference finals or something like that. So, yeah, I can't wait, man.
Oh, yeah. One last thing before we dip. I don't want to be here.
And neither does Eric Bledsoe.